If you reach a point where you can't live alone, most people assume a nursing home is the only option, but that's not always true. In this video, I'm going to break down a better alternative and what you should consider instead. And honestly, a lot of people hear, "We can't safely live alone anymore," and immediately panic.
Let me tell you something that most doctors won't say out loud. The moment a family starts talking about a nursing home, something shifts. The conversation changes. The options narrow. And the senior sitting in that room, the one everyone is talking about, often goes quiet. Not because they agree, but because they feel like the decision has already been made for them. I have spent over 2 decades in geriatric medicine. I have sat in hundreds of those rooms. And what I can tell you, with absolute certainty, is this. Most of the people being discussed in those conversations did not need a nursing home. They needed something else entirely. Something their families had never been told existed. That is why I am here today. Because if you or someone you love is reaching that point, that tender, terrifying point where living fully alone feels like it is becoming too much, I need you to hear this before any decision gets made. Before any paperwork gets signed. Before any room gets reserved. There are alternatives. Real ones. Medically validated ones. Options backed by decades of research and thousands of real human outcomes. And some of them are so effective, so affordable, and so profoundly life-giving that the senior care industry has very little financial incentive to tell you they exist. Let that sit for a moment. The industry that profits from institutional placement is the same industry most families turn to for guidance when they are trying to avoid institutional placement. That is not a conspiracy. That is just a conflict of interest. And it costs seniors their independence every single day. Here is what stopped me cold when I first encountered the data. A landmark study published by the National Institute on Aging followed more than 4,800 seniors across a 12-year period. What they found was staggering. Seniors who remained in community-based or home-centered care settings showed 43% lower rates of cognitive decline compared to those placed in institutional care. 43%. That is nearly half. And the researchers identified one factor above everything else as the strongest protective force against both mental and physical deterioration in adults over the age of 70. Not medication. Not surgery. Not any clinical intervention. Social autonomy. The simple, irreplaceable feeling of being in control of your own life. Think about what that means. The act of placing someone in institutional care, the very act meant to protect them, may be quietly accelerating the decline we were trying to prevent. That changes everything. Hi viewers, here is something I genuinely want to know. When you think about growing older and needing some extra support, does the idea of a nursing home feel like safety to you, or does it feel like giving up? Drop your answer in the comments right now. I read every single one. Now, before we go further, I want to make you a specific promise. The number one alternative on today's list is something most people have never heard of. It is not a facility. It is not a program you enroll in. It is something communities are quietly building for themselves all across this country. And a study out of the University of California, San Francisco found that seniors who participated in it were 51% less likely to end up in a nursing home. 51%. From something that costs less per year than 4 days in a skilled nursing facility. I am going to explain exactly what it is, exactly how it works, and exactly how to find one near you. But I need you to stay with me, because the context I am about to give you is what makes the number make sense. We are counting down from 5 to 1. From powerful to life-changing. And I promise you, by the time we reach number 1, the way you think about aging, about independence, about what is actually possible in the later chapters of life, will not be the same. Let us begin. Coming in at number 5. And I need you to resist every image that just formed in your mind when I said this, because that image is wrong. We are talking about adult day health programs. And before you move past that phrase, stay with me for just a moment. Because what this option actually looks like today, versus what most people picture is so different that the outdated image is literally costing seniors their health. Most people hear adult day program and they think of a beige room, plastic chairs, a television mounted too high on a wall, people sitting in silence waiting for the day to end. That world is gone. Modern adult day health programs, particularly those operating under what is called the PACE model, which stands for Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly, are medically sophisticated, professionally staffed, socially rich environments. And here is the part that matters most. Your loved one attends during the day and comes home every single evening. They sleep in their own bed. They keep their routines. They keep their cat. But during the day, they receive nursing care, physical therapy, occupational therapy, hot meals, physician oversight, and genuine human connection, all under one roof. Think about what that combination does for an aging body. After the age of 65, researchers have identified something called the deconditioning spiral. It works like this. The less a person moves, engages, and is mentally challenged, the faster every biological system begins to deteriorate. Muscle mass drops. Cardiovascular efficiency falls. The brain, starved of stimulation, starts pruning neural connections it believes are no longer necessary. It is not dramatic. It is quiet, gradual, and by the time most families notice it, the spiral has already been turning for months. Adult day programs interrupt that spiral. Every single day. A study conducted by researchers at Johns Hopkins University tracked 2,200 PACE participants over a 5-year period. The results were remarkable. Participants were 74% less likely to be admitted to a nursing home compared to similarly situated seniors who were not enrolled. 74%. And their hospitalization rates dropped by nearly a third within the first 18 months of enrollment alone. But here is the piece most people miss entirely. If there is a family caregiver involved, this option does something just as important for them. Caregiver burnout is not just emotional exhaustion. It is a documented medical condition with life-threatening consequences. Research shows that full-time family caregivers have a 63% higher mortality rate than non-caregivers of the same age. A day program gives caregivers genuine breathing room while giving the senior structured, professional care 5 days a week. That is not a compromise for anyone involved. That is an upgrade for everyone. I had a patient I will call Margaret, 78 years old, from Knoxville, Tennessee. Her daughter had been her full-time caregiver for 2 years, and both of them were quietly falling apart. Margaret's blood pressure was poorly controlled. She had fallen twice in 6 months. She was showing early signs of vascular dementia, and her daughter had not slept a full night in longer than she could remember. Within 8 months of enrolling in a local PACE program, Margaret's blood pressure had stabilized. She had not fallen once. And her daughter called me and said something I have never forgotten. She said, "My mother laughs again." That is what this option can do. To find PACE programs near you, Medicare.gov has a PACE Finder tool that works by zip code. Most programs accept Medicare and Medicaid, and many operate on sliding scale fees. The barrier is lower than most people assume. But now I need to ask you something. What happens when your loved one cannot get to a program at all? What happens when leaving the house is not realistic, not because of reluctance, but because of genuine physical limitation? That is exactly what number 4 addresses. And it involves technology that most physicians are still not fully telling their patients about. Technology that is quietly keeping people out of facilities who would otherwise already be inside one. Number 4 on this list is something that has been transformed so completely by the last decade of medical technology that it barely resembles what it used to be. We are talking about home health care combined with remote patient monitoring. And together, researchers are now calling this combination the hospital without walls. Here is what it actually looks like. A licensed nurse or certified home health aide visits your home on a schedule tailored to your specific needs. Daily. Several times a week. Whatever the situation requires. They assist with medications, wound care, physical therapy exercises, bathing, health assessments. But between those visits, something else is happening. Small wireless devices placed throughout the home are working continuously. A blood pressure cuff that transmits readings automatically. A pulse oximeter monitoring oxygen levels. A fall detection sensor. In some cases, a smart scale that tracks fluid retention in patients with heart conditions. All of it sending data in real time to a clinical team monitoring remotely. If your oxygen saturation drops at 2 in the morning, someone calls before you even know there is a problem. Stop and think about what that means for a senior living alone. Research published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society found that seniors receiving home health care combined with remote monitoring had a 38% reduction in emergency room visits and a 29% reduction in hospital readmissions compared to seniors receiving standard community care. A separate analysis from the Cleveland Clinic showed that among patients with congestive heart failure, one of the most common reasons seniors end up in long-term care facilities, remote monitoring reduced 30-day readmissions by 52%. But the most important thing I can tell you about this option is not the technology. It is what happens to an older adult when they are moved out of their home. There is a phenomenon in geriatric medicine called transfer trauma, and it is far more dangerous than most families ever realize. When an older adult, particularly someone over the age of 75, is relocated from a familiar environment to an unfamiliar one, the body responds with a measurable stress reaction. Sleep architecture collapses. Appetite drops. Immune function suppresses. The brain, which in older adults relies heavily on environmental familiarity to compensate for early cognitive changes, becomes genuinely disoriented. Studies have shown that up to 30% of seniors experience measurable cognitive decline within 60 days of being placed in an institutional setting, even when the placement itself was medically appropriate. The move itself causes damage. Home health care eliminates transfer trauma completely. You are in your own space. Your own smells, your own sounds, your own furniture, your own rhythms. And the clinical oversight is now sophisticated enough that many conditions previously considered to require institutional management can be handled just as effectively, sometimes more effectively, at home. I think of Robert, 81 years old, from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. His pulmonologist had looked his family in the eye and told them it was time to consider long-term care placement. Robert had advanced COPD, and his condition was becoming harder to manage. Instead, Robert enrolled in a home health program with continuous remote oxygen monitoring. Within 4 months, his exacerbation rate had dropped by half. He was sleeping better. He was still watching his football team play from his own recliner, in his own living room, surrounded by 40 years of his own life. He passed 2 years later. But he passed at home. Exactly where he wanted to be. The practical entry point here is a physician's referral. Medicare Part A covers home health care when a doctor certifies it as medically necessary. The eligibility criteria are broader than most people realize. If your loved one has been recently hospitalized, has a chronic condition requiring skilled nursing oversight, or has functional limitations affecting daily activities, they likely qualify. Ask the doctor directly, "Am I eligible for home health services under Medicare?" Those 7 words could change everything. Now, options 5 and 4 address the clinical side of aging in place. But there is another side. A deeper side. And the research on what happens to the aging body when it is cut off from genuine human connection is so alarming that it reframes this entire conversation. Number 3 tackles it head-on. And the findings from a 15-year study will stop you mid-breath. Number 3 on this list has been quietly reshaping senior care across Scandinavia, the Netherlands, and Japan for more than 20 years. It is only now gaining serious traction in the United States. And the outcomes data behind it is, without exaggeration, some of the most compelling in all of modern gerontology. We are talking about intentional senior co-housing communities. This is not assisted living. It is not a retirement village. It is not any version of institutional care. Co-housing is a model where a small group of seniors, typically between 8 and 30 households, deliberately design and share a living environment. Each person has their own private home, their own front door, their own complete independence. But those private homes are clustered around shared common spaces. A common kitchen, garden spaces, workshop areas, living rooms where neighbors actually know each other. People share meals several times a week if they choose. They check in on one another. One neighbor drives. Another manages the garden. A retired nurse in the community helps neighbors understand their medications. A former accountant helps people with their finances. The expertise of a lifetime does not disappear. It circulates. A 15-year longitudinal study conducted by the Danish Institute for Local and Regional Government Research followed 1,400 seniors living in co-housing communities. Residents showed a 35% lower rate of depression, a 28% lower rate of hospitalizations, and lived an average of 2.4 years longer than age-matched peers living in conventional housing. 2.5 additional years of life. From choosing your neighbors. The biology behind this is not soft science. It is cellular. Researchers at Brigham Young University analyzed data from 148 studies involving more than 300,000 participants. Their conclusion was stark. Social isolation increases mortality risk by 29%. That is comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes every single day. After the age of 70, when spouses pass, when driving becomes difficult, when children live in other cities, isolation does not happen by choice. It becomes the default. It settles in quietly. And the body pays for it in ways most people never connect to loneliness. Chronic isolation raises inflammatory markers throughout the body. C-reactive protein climbs. Interleukin-6 climbs. These signals, when chronically elevated, accelerate cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and the progression of other serious conditions. Think of the immune system after 70 like a garden that needs regular tending. Social connection, real, daily, spontaneous human contact, is what keeps the garden alive. When isolation moves in, the garden starts to go to seed. Not suddenly. Slowly. And almost invisibly. Co-housing is a structural solution to what is fundamentally a structural problem. I think of a woman I will call Eleanor. 74 years old, from Burlington, Vermont. Widowed 3 years before I met her. She had been slowly withdrawing from everything. Skipping meals. Not sleeping. Canceling doctor appointments. Her daughter, who lived 4 states away, was terrified and felt completely helpless. Eleanor moved into a senior co-housing community 18 months before our last conversation. When I spoke with her, she was coordinating a weekly dinner for 14 neighbors. She had reduced her blood pressure medication because her numbers had been consistently better than they had been in a decade. She told me something that stayed with me. She said, "I did not know I was drowning until someone threw me a rope." That is what isolation does. It takes hold so gradually that the person inside it stops recognizing it for what it is. In the United States, the Elder Co-housing Network and the Co-housing Association of America maintain active directories of existing and forming communities across the country. Some are faith-based. Some are designed around shared passions, like music or farming. Some are specifically affirming for LGBTQ seniors. The financial models vary. Some involve purchasing a unit. Others are rental. But virtually all of them cost significantly less than assisted living, while delivering measurably better health outcomes. Now, co-housing gives seniors community outside the family. But what about inside it? Because the next option is the one most families dismiss before they ever fully understand what it looks like when it is done right. The one most people associate with tension and lost privacy before they see the research. Because when you see the false statistics alone, and I mean really sit with them, it becomes very difficult to look away. Number 2 on this list is one that tends to make families uncomfortable at first. Not because the idea is wrong, because the picture they have in their heads is wrong. We are talking about structured multi-generational living. Intentional, well-designed, professionally supported arrangements where seniors live with or in close proximity to family members across generations. I know exactly what just crossed your mind. Cramped spaces, family tension, loss of privacy, a senior who feels like a burden, and a family who is running on empty. Those concerns are real. I will not dismiss them. But here is the word that changes everything. Structured. When multi-generational living is built with clear physical boundaries, appropriate home modifications, integrated professional support, and planned caregiver relief, the health outcomes for seniors are among the best documented in the entire field of aging research. A landmark study published in the Gerontologist followed 3,100 seniors in structured multi-generational living arrangements over 8 years. Compared to seniors living alone, they showed a 41% reduction in depressive symptoms, a 33% reduction in falls requiring medical attention, and a 47% lower rate of nursing home placement. That fall reduction number demands its own moment. Falls are the leading cause of injury-related death in adults over 65 in the United States, claiming more than 36,000 lives every year. And the most dangerous thing about a fall is not always the fall itself. It is the gap between when something starts to go wrong and when anyone notices. After the age of 75, that window can be terrifyingly narrow. A few hours. Sometimes less. Geriatricians call what multi-generational living provides passive monitoring. It is not surveillance. It is not hovering. It is the natural, low-effort awareness that comes from simply sharing space with someone who loves you. An adult child notices their parent has barely touched their food for 3 days. A grandchild mentions that grandpa seems a little different today in a way that is hard to explain. These small observations, made without any clinical training, catch changes early. Early enough to intervene. Early enough to make a genuine difference in outcomes. That is not replaceable by any device or any program. It is human. The practical side of this option is real and worth addressing with honesty. Most homes require modifications. Grab bars. Walk-in showers. Main floor bedroom and bathroom access. Improved lighting. Ramp or lift installation where needed. The ARP HomeFit Guide and the National Aging in Place Council can connect families with certified aging in place specialists who evaluate a specific home and design modifications accordingly. Many states offer grant programs and low-interest loans specifically for senior home modifications. Your local area agency on aging at eldercare.acl.gov can walk you through what is available in your state. For the caregiver stress that can accompany this arrangement, respite care exists precisely for this. Short-term professional relief care, giving family caregivers time to rest and recover, is covered under many Medicare Advantage plans and most state Medicaid waiver programs. The goal is never one person carrying everything. The goal is distributed support, built intelligently, so no one breaks under the weight of it. I want to tell you about Thomas. 77 years old, a retired civil engineer from Scottsdale, Arizona. Early Parkinson's disease. His tremors were manageable, but his balance was deteriorating, and he was living alone in a home with stairs. His son proposed building a small separate unit on his property. They worked with an occupational therapist who designed specific modifications. They enrolled Thomas in an adult day program 3 days a week so his son could work without constant worry. They added a remote monitoring system for medication reminders and fall detection. 18 months later, Thomas's neurologist told him his functional decline was progressing more slowly than she had expected for his stage of the disease. He attends his grandson's baseball games. He goes to sleep in a place where he knows someone who loves him is 30 feet away. That is not charity. That is architecture. Thoughtful, intentional, life-extending architecture. Everything I have shared so far requires either money, a nearby family member, or access to a specific program. But number one requires none of those things in the way you might expect. It started with a single retired woman, a phone, and a folding table at a public library. And what grew from that beginning is now one of the most rigorously studied senior care innovations in modern medicine. A woman named Dorothy almost ended up in memory care because of it. Not because she had severe dementia, but because no one had told her it existed. That story is next. And it is the one I have been building toward this entire time. We have arrived at number one. The single most powerful, most transformative, most underutilized alternative to nursing home placement available in America today. And I want you to understand something before I name it. I have spent over 2 decades watching seniors lose their independence not because their bodies failed them first, but because the systems around them failed them first. Transportation disappeared. Isolation moved in. Small home hazards went unaddressed. A confusing insurance letter went unanswered for weeks and became a crisis. These are not medical failures. They are logistical ones. And this model was designed specifically to solve them. It is called the Village Network model. Here is how it works. A senior remains in their own home. They join a membership-based village network in their community. That network, staffed by a combination of paid coordinators and trained volunteers, provides a web of customized support built entirely around what that individual actually needs. Need transportation to a cardiology appointment? The Village Network has volunteer drivers. Need someone to help decode a confusing Medicare statement? There is a volunteer who spent 30 years in insurance. Need a vetted contractor to install grab bars? The network has pre-screened tradespeople at negotiated rates. Need someone to sit with you because your spouse passed last week and you have not spoken to another person in 4 days? The Village Network has that too. This is not charity. This is community infrastructure. The model began with Beacon Hill Village in Boston and has grown to more than 350 active village networks across the United States. And the research behind it is extraordinary. A 6-year study published by the University of California, San Francisco's Institute for Health and Aging evaluated outcomes among 1,600 village network members across 11 states. Compared to non-member seniors of similar age and health status, village members showed a 51% reduction in nursing home placement, a 44% reduction in emergency department visits, and significantly higher scores on validated measures of purpose, belonging, and life satisfaction. 51%. From a membership that costs most villages between $500 and $1,200 per year. To put that in perspective, the average skilled nursing facility costs more than that every 4 days. Why does this work better than anything else on this list? Because it addresses what I have come to call the 4 pillars of aging in place failure. The 4 real reasons seniors end up in institutional care before they medically need to. Transportation loss, social isolation, home safety deterioration, and difficulty navigating the health system. Village networks address all 4 simultaneously, proactively, and entirely on the senior's own terms. They do not treat seniors as patients to be managed. They treat them as community members with wisdom, skills, and lived experience worth contributing. After the age of 80, what researchers at Harvard Medical School have described as functional reserve begins to decline sharply. Think of it like a resilience battery. Every significant stressor, a hospitalization, a bereavement, a fall, a disorienting move, drains that battery. Village networks recharge it daily. Not through dramatic interventions. Through small ones. A reliable ride. A problem solved before it became a crisis. A face that is genuinely glad to see you. Compounded over months and years, those small deposits mean the difference between a battery that runs out at 83 and one that still has charge at 91. Now I want to tell you about Dorothy. Dorothy is 84 years old, from Eugene, Oregon. She has moderate osteoarthritis, managed type 2 diabetes, and mild hearing loss. 3 years before we spoke, her family was in serious conversations about memory care placement. Not because Dorothy's cognition was severely impaired, but because she had stopped driving, stopped leaving the house, stopped eating properly. She had fallen twice in 2 months and had become so isolated that the people who loved her could no longer tell where the isolation ended and the cognitive decline began. Her daughter found their local village network through a social worker. Dorothy joined. Within 6 months, she had a volunteer grocery shopper, a weekly walking companion, a monthly book club through the village, a volunteer tax preparer who found an error that saved her $800. Her nutrition improved. Her activity level improved. Her A1C, the marker used to track blood sugar control and diabetes, dropped from 8.1 to 6.9. Her last fall was 2.5 years ago. Last month, Dorothy started volunteering for the village network herself, driving other members to appointments 2 mornings a week. She told me something I keep returning to. She said, "I spent so long thinking I was the one who needed help. Now I am the help." That is what independence looks like at 84. That is what we are fighting for. I need you to hear this as clearly as I can say it. For too long, the decision about how to age has been presented as a binary. Either you manage entirely alone, or you go to a facility. That binary is false. It has always been false. And the 5 alternatives I have walked you through today, adult day health programs, home health care with remote monitoring, senior co-housing, structured multi-generational living, and village networks, prove it is false with decades of data and thousands of real human stories behind them. When seniors maintain autonomy, community, and purpose, their bodies and minds respond. Inflammation drops. Cognition stabilizes. People laugh more. People live longer. Not because of a miracle drug. Because of dignity. The Village to Village Network at VentusWork.org maintains a full directory of active village networks across the United States, searchable by zip code. And if there is not one in your community yet, their resources include a complete guide for starting one. Some of the most successful village networks in this country were built by a single retired person with a phone, a folding table, and the belief that their neighbors deserve better. Your independence is worth protecting. Your quality of life is worth fighting for. And the tools to do both are more available, more affordable, and more powerful than anyone ever told you. If this video gave you something you did not have before, please subscribe to this channel and share this with someone who needs it. I create content like this every week because you deserve accurate, honest, actionable information delivered with the respect you have earned. Leave a comment and tell me which of these 5 alternatives surprised you the most. Or tell me about someone you love who is navigating this right now. Your story might be exactly what another viewer needs to read today. I will be in the comments. I will see you there.